Right. Who's got the aspirin? The Nurofen? Who's got the headache cure that we're going to need before we're finished here? Who understands SAF?
Well, in 1 hour and a half, you're going to know everything there is to know about it, I think.
The problem with SAF is that we just keep jumping over the same glossy phrases.
There's not enough of it because it's too expensive. And while it's too expensive, we can't ramp it up. Until we can scale it up, it's not a solution. But this is meant to account for, I think it's 65% of the emissions reductions to hit the net zero target by 2050.
And then within about 20 seconds of that, somebody else says incentives versus mandates, European mandates, ETS schemes, CORSIA versus the European scheme.
It's not fair.
Doesn't really matter. None of us understand it. That's the problem. None of us really understand. And we continually gloss over the same phrases again and again, which are that there's not enough of it, we'll never meet the target, it doesn't.
And there's a lot of finger pointing. And I find, particularly off stage and off camera, before and after interviews, it's very easy for stakeholders to point the finger at someone else. It's your fault.
No.
You're not making enough.
No, I think you're wrong on this. Again, you're wrong.
Today, we're getting all the stakeholders on the stage, so the finger pointing will be much more entertaining, and hopefully we actually get some resolutions.
No, we won't get any resolution, because we can't produce enough SAF.
Oh, God.
Exactly. I knew I'd get to that point. It's that point when you think, oh, a plague on all your houses. And that's when we need the aspirin and the Nurofen.
But it will be entertaining.
That much we can guarantee. All right. So, where do we begin?
We're going to begin with the suppliers. So, can I welcome...
Oh, no, they're the problem. They are the absolute problem. It is the suppliers who are the problem, because they will not produce unless people pay for it and incentives. I'll leave you with your suppliers.
Right, let's get all the panelists on the stage, but we will start with the suppliers. But everyone up, please.
Where do I sit?
You're on the cocktail table.
What?
Enjoy yourself, sir. All right, so joining me first, we have Louise Tricoire, who is SVP of Aviation and Marine Fuels at Total Energy, and we have Matti, Lehmus, President and CEO of Neste. We'll introduce our other panelists as we go along. I don't want to overwhelm you, but you'll see some lurking at various points in the stage. But we are going to kick off with the suppliers. And I've been looking forward to this, I have to say, for some weeks now. Because so often, particularly when we're talking to airlines, they say, we're buying every drop of SAF available. This isn't a demand issue. This is a supply issue. You're not making enough. Matti, kick us off. Why aren't you making more?
Well, I think I can start with some positive news in a way. I think a lot has actually happened in this whole SAF industry, both when I look at what's happening on the regulatory side, but also what happens on the supply side. So actually today there is quite a substantial supply capability. Neste, as an example, has created 1 million tons of capability this year, and we do see that these capabilities will continue growing in the next few years as there is a number of projects in the pipeline. Of course, looking at the long-term targets, it's clear that we need to keep that momentum and continue seeing the long-term demand growth, and in that way make it possible to also continue these investments.
By current estimates, it's hoped that SAF will actually, I think, triple this year versus last year, and it doubled from the year before last year to 2023. So it's ramping up. At Total Energy, one of the biggest producers in the world of jet fuel, what percentage of your jet fuel is SAF currently?
Currently, I must admit, it's quite limited. Nevertheless,
how limited?
Well,
give us a percentage term.
So I do not have a clear percentage because it's very limited, but actually we are answering the demand of our customers. So first, we are answering the mandates, and we are also offering for addition to mandate, which is voluntary demand. So we are actually meeting the demand that we do have.
I mean, you started making SAF in larger quantities, I believe, maybe the end of 2021, 2022, at the same time that the French government introduced a mandate. You had to. Would you have started making SAF if it wasn't for a mandate?
Well, actually, we did start before the French mandate. So actually, our first demo flight was in 2014. And we have had demo flights in the years after. Then after we had a line with Air France in France for a year of time, every week. So we are actually a pioneer in SAF, and we've started long before the mandate. Now, effectively, we started ramping up to meet the mandate in France, okay? And we are heading at 1.5 million tons by 2030. So that's the objective. By 2030, we will then be able to supply approximately 10% of what we see as a supply in 2030, which is a substantial amount of SAF that we're going to bring to the market.
You've been a world leader in SAF for some years now, but your business has been struggling this year. Is this due to new competition in the market, the big energy producers finally entering the SAF arena? Or is this an issue with shareholders not seeing the value?
Well, I think indeed, if I look at both original renewable diesel and SAF, Neste has been a leader in starting that early. We started more than a decade ago, actually also with SAF, first capabilities. And we also made decisions to grow our SAF capabilities as early as 2018, the investment decisions 2021, and we will grow to 1.5 million tons SAF capability by the end of this year. So clearly also here taking a view that there is the need for these type of solutions to help decarbonizing also this segment. If I look at the broader renewable field this year, we are seeing that there is quite a lot of capacity ramping up in the short term. At the same time, it's clear that the long-term outlook for the demand has not changed. We have seen very ambitious targets being set both on the road side but also on the aviation side for 2030, just last autumn.
Before we move on to Richard and his regulators, what is it you would both like to see from policymakers, from regulators? Is it more mandates? Is it more incentives? Louise?
So, I mean, first of all, we need a level playing field. We see the mandates in Europe. We see, let's say, we see certain norms referring to SAF in Europe, which are different from the international ICAO norms. So we would like mandates. We would like level playing norms for the product that we have to produce. And we would like incentive. They go together. Of course, I mean, the Europe players are struggling to meet the mandates, whereas other geographies like the US are subsidizing the production. So what we want is to have production as close as possible to where the consumption is going to be done. So that is why in our project in France, Grand Puy, we have actually partnered with a local player of used oil in the region of the refinery. So I think this is very, very positive because we are building a whole ecosystem which is very beneficial to the environment because we take the feedstock locally, we refine it locally inside an existing refinery, which we are transforming into a biorefinery. And then this very refinery is connected directly via a pipe to Charles de Gaulle. So that means that effectively we need mandates, we need level playing norms for the product, we need incentive, and we need the whole industry playing together, including the feedstock that will bring the feedstock as close as possible, and including the infrastructure, meaning that we cannot produce SAF in the middle of nowhere, because the airports are already in existing hubs, and we cannot afford building a whole new infrastructure. This is very costly.
Which almost brings in a whole other stakeholder, which is airports. Quickly, Matti, what would you like to see from regulators before
I would add,
Richard?
exactly, I mean, and it's not different for SAF than it's been in the road segment 10 years ago. I think the important thing as we are looking at investments which have a long-term perspective, whether it's production, whether it's feedstock, new technology development, very important is the long-term nature, that there is a predictability. At the same time, for us, regulation needs to be technology neutral. It should, let's say, encourage innovation, because looking at renewable fuels and SAF longer term, we will need to also expand the feedstock pool. And that is, of course, where all the research goes at the moment, to longer term then enable also new feedstocks, new technologies.
Okay, Richard, encouraging innovation sounds more like carrots than sticks to me. Over to you.
Yeah, but what do they want? Carrot or stick? Which do they prefer?
Louise wants a little bit of both.
Yeah, and perhaps as a thought, I mean, the mandates like we see now in the European Union, they have this big benefit that they do actually create long-term predictability. At the same time, incentives can also work like we see in North America. So I think they are not exclusive also. You can combine these two actually.
All right. So the suppliers want their carrots and their sticks. What are the regulators going to give them? Toshiyuki Onuma is the senior DG at the Japan Civil Aviation Bureau. Maryam AlBalooshi is the state lead negotiator for aviation climate change. Neither of you are going to get off the hook here. Are you more carrot or are you more stick? Incentive or mandate?
Well, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Good morning, everyone. No, not either any of this yet, because I've been hearing my colleagues from Total and Neste. I've been talking to them long time ago, along with other suppliers as well. But it's not the same model that we can adapt everywhere. The European model or the model which we have in the US, which we've been following for the last 15 years. Let's be realistic here, Richard. This is not an easy topic. And we've been observing what others are doing for more than a decade. And what's happening today in US as an incentive, that the number that we are reading today didn't happen today. It took more than 30 years for them to come together.
Right.
And the government supported the suppliers to produce. If I go back to this region, along with other neighbors' regions as well, we just started this topic, let's say, honestly, from 2018, where we gave it the whole attention. When the first Corsia...
hang on. Corsia. You're throwing that in?
So Corsia is the carbon offsetting reduction scheme for international aviation. So when we negotiated that scheme and the issue of the fossil fuel and the clean energy came, that time, the whole narrative changed. The government changed their perspective, the mindset was changed, and everyone was again engaged. If I talk about the same fuel task group, which was just before 2018, we were talking about less than 25 experts in that group. Today, within ICAO, this is the biggest group that we're working on, more than 400 experts. I'm a vice chair of the CAPE as well, the committee. So it's not that the same model, as I said, we're going to fit my region or other region. So we're talking to the government.
Oh, no, hang on a second, hang on. You don't get off that easily. What model do you like, then?
Well, we are so flexible government. If we are talking about UAE, it's very flexible government. We are one of the first government in this region that have officially a SAF roadmap in place. We just announced the SAF policy in the COP28. So the government do understand the importance of having the SAF in the region. However,
go on.
I have a very big sector that I have protected at the same time, which is the aviation sector as well. So we came to an understanding. It's a different understanding. It's the two states that led that topic, UAE and Saudi Arabia, when we said we need something to transition to the SAF. And here we say we came with the new invented product, which is called lower carbon aviation fuel. So the LCAF...
get the aspirin. All right, we'll come to low carbon aviation. I just want to talk to you, sir, about Japan's, because you're going for a halfway house between mandates and incentives. I'm coming back. I haven't forgotten about low carbon.
Yes. First of all, I'd like to thank IATA to invite me here, regardless of my position as regulator. And please understand, I'm not only regulator, but also promoter of this industry. And this character clearly reflects what Japanese government, in particular, Civil Aviation Authority, is expected by people and industry. As you mentioned, we are always going to the half and half approach. Mandate, of course, and also incentives. And mandate's nature is slightly different from the European context. Mandate is a kind of condition for providing subsidies.
Right.
Yes, that's the important point. You need to show commitment to get taxpayers' subsidy. So from that viewpoint, airline and supplier in Japanese context, they commit to replace 10% consumption of the total fuel by 2030. Yes.
Right, but they still won't be enough produced.
Oh, yes, of course. As she mentioned, this topic is quite new compared to the European context as well as United States context. So we are still on the beginning stage. Yes.
You're still at the beginning stage.
Yes.
With a sort of version of mandates to do it and incentives to create. So you've looked at both schemes.
Yes.
And you've sort of gone for a halfway house.
Yes, yes.
But where does your low carbon aviation fit into that?
So the lower carbon aviation fuel, it's a transition energy toward the SAF because, as I mentioned, the quantity is very low and the demand is very high. So we didn't want to trap again the sector after the COVID. And we wanted to have something which is within lower carbon intensity that meets certain criteria that will help the supplier to have enough time to reach to the level that we need the SAF with the right price, with the right demand as well.
Okay,
supply.
so does low carbon aviation fuel substitute SAF or does it replace it?
It complements, it doesn't substitute it. Because
So why not just go for SAF?
we don't have it. The feedstock is an issue. The financial aspect is an issue. So you cannot jump, Richard. We are talking about a global framework that's been adopted last year in Dubai, the Dubai Global Framework, which says 5% reduction, relying on the fuel, which is LCAF, SAF, and cleaner energy. So if I will say, let's stop the aviation sector today. They are not going to fly anymore because we don't have SAF. What will happen?
But if other regimes like the EU and the US have looked at this in as much detail as everybody else and have decided, no, SAF is the answer, why would you want to muddy the waters?
No, it's not the SAF is the answer. This is the miscommunication that we have. If you go to the declaration, if you go to the ICAO's resolution, it doesn't say SAF only. It says LCAF, SAF, and other cleaner energy, including the hydrogen, which is a promising one in the future. So because we have a lot of promotion for the SAF, and there is a lot of media stuff on SAF, we keep forgetting the other part of the puzzle. So you cannot just, as a government, say, I'm going to produce tomorrow SAF. It's not easy process as well.
So why did you not go for this low-carbon aviation stuff?
Before going into that, of course, we also agree your approach.
Yes.
SAF is not only the option. We should explore all the options. But in Japanese context, we do not have any oil industry. I mean, strictly speaking, we only have refinery industry because we do not produce oil itself. And at this moment, Japanese refinery industry has a problem of the decrease of the consumption of the oil as a whole because now automobile shift from the gasoline to the electricity. So the total consumption of the oil itself starts decreasing. So the refinery industry need to have another business model to survive and change their business structure. So from that context, I think SAF is quite important solution, not only for aviation, but also Japanese refinery industry. So that is the reason we are focusing on SAF, yes.
Right.
Yes.
But let me say something. Let me compliment Japanese government because in 2022, officially their delegation supported the LCAF as a transitioning energy, and many other governments did. So we all, as a 190 plus government who's a member in ICAO, we know that the future is the SAF, not today. When I say the future, I cannot see it happening before 2050 with the right quantity and the price.
Oh, hang on, this is getting rather depressing. So you're basically saying you don't think it's going to happen?
In the near future, no.
So all this noise and fuel. Are you getting ready, Anna?
Oh, yeah.
You getting ready?
Oh, yeah.
Let me give you a scientific perspective here.
No, please. Let's stick with a factual thing that most people in this room don't believe it's going to happen.
No, we believe it will happen. It's happening already. But the right quantity, the right supply, when there is no clue it's going to happen in the near future, because our net zero is by 2050, and it's only 25 years from now.
And your low carbon and your hybrid house will get us there.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
There's no difference for me.
Anna?
Well, we're going to move it on to the airlines, who's frankly the only person who hasn't been blamed yet, I think.
Well, before we go to the airlines, what do your suppliers think of my good friends at low carbon?
Well, I was literally just whispering that to Louise. Do you make LCAF? You can tell everyone now.
Well, frankly, I don't really see the difference. SAF is sustainable aviation fuel, so it can come from biosource. It can be refitting of a refinery with biofeedstock. It can be H2 based, green H2, of course.
No, but I think what my friend here is saying is that there isn't enough biofuel, there isn't enough of the other stuff, and you're not going to be able to do it. Therefore, the low carbon versions, which can be produced, are preferable.
And is that fair, particularly looking at the HEFA process, Matti?
Yeah, I think both are important. It's like having been a long time in the energy industry, there is typically not one silver bullet which resolves everything. What we have today is a proven technology which clearly is now scaling up, and that is available today and in the coming years. And in parallel, it's really important to work on the new technologies, because they will then enable the growth in the next decade, expanding the feedstock pool. So it's both and. It's a time question. As the HEFA technology is proven and it's available today.
Because it's an illusion, really, to think of SAF as any one thing. There are so many different ways to make it. And actually, the most popular way of making it right now probably isn't the big future of SAF.
The airlines who buy it, who have you got?
Right, I'm going to be moving over to see Andrew Parker, who's the Chief Sustainability Officer at Qantas.
I did feel a little isolated here, sitting on my own, but this is better.
Has it been
You're
really weird?
Australian, that comes with the territory.
Has it felt a bit...
I think it's a metaphor that we're going to come together later. And
Yeah. What have you thought so far, both from our suppliers and from the regulators?
yeah, look, I think they're very reasonable positions, and this is incredibly difficult as a transition. But I think we are far more optimistic. In the last 12 months, the policy landscape has changed so radically. You hear what Japan is doing of a very significant mandate coupled with economic incentives. The UK, Singapore, conservative sometimes in policy, but Singapore has very quickly developed a very powerful mandate and program. Our government in Australia was badly behind.
I was going to say, you don't have mandates or incentives.
No, but in our last budget 2 months ago, the government announced it would seriously explore a mandate, and that for the first time there was money to be spent into incentives and production. Some way to go. But I would just also say, from an airline's perspective, you also look in the last year, and it's Qantas, it's United, it's Emirates. We have all started climate funds. Of our $400 million fund, we have $100 million out the door now, or executed or committed into SAF projects in Australia, in the region, and the United States. So I think we are out of first gear. I think plants are opening around the world. Policy, as I say, is changing significantly. Many airlines now have major products that we are giving to our customers, particularly corporate customers and freight customers. So we are in no way there yet, but I would just say that for our 2030 interim targets, which is what we are very focused on, we can now see a pathway for us to reach 10% SAF uptake for Qantas by 2030.
Yeah, it's a really ambitious target, given that there is no mandate in Australia, given there aren't incentives. So for you, where is the pressure? Is it Corsair? Is it your customers? Is it your shareholders? Where's the pressure been?
Yeah, look, I think it is, first of all, as you heard on the CEO panel, if you heard from Willie yesterday, and the UAE Minister for the Economy, you know, this is a non-negotiable Our customers are demanding change. Our investors are. Our employees are. Australia is at the end of the world. You fly a long way to get there. We don't have a train to Singapore. So aviation and its criticality needs SAF, and that's why we're so focused on SAF into wing to meet the targets by 2030. And we are doing things that we have never contemplated before. So it is unusual territory for airlines to be advocating for mandates. It is unusual for airlines to establish what are really entrepreneurial funds to try to develop an industry. But we felt if we weren't doing some heavy lifting, getting our hands dirty, then the risk just grows that we won't meet particularly the 2030 targets.
You're worried about getting left behind?
Absolutely, particularly in policy. So I think the commentary this morning has been absolutely right. What the US has done has been extraordinary, and you can feel that it is hard. You're going to see projects fall over, but we're seeing plants opening. You're seeing states, a significant number of states back in the IRA with state-based incentives. So we are fortunate. Qantas has a very big network into the United States. So I will just say, is one very quick important example for the room. Because of that, and because of US policy, we worked with Airbus and Boeing as part of our narrow and wide-bodied fleet replacement programs, that sustainability was built into those contracts. And what that means is we said, you must, because these are multi-decade assets, these aircraft that we are all buying, so you need to help us secure SAF at the right price as part of that order. And they both came to the party. So we are working together, particularly in the US, but also Australia, in how we secure that SAF supply at a price that we can afford.
You're also invested in a refinery.
Correct.
Which is a very interesting model.
Yeah, so this is a project in far north Queensland. As you know, in Australia, we produce a lot of agricultural products. This is the heartland of sugar production in Australia. Most of that agricultural waste product gets burnt or ploughed into the ground. So yeah, we are working with Jet Zero. They're using Lanza tech out of the US, backed by our friends in Japan, Australian investment and Airbus. And it'll be an agricultural waste product that is essentially alcohol to jet. And we're really confident about this project that when it's up and running, we hope by 27, 28, producing about 100 million litres of SAF a year.
Well, that's a very interesting model, Richard.
It is, and it pulls together the strands to some extent, Andrew, of what we're talking about. That it's not either mandates or incentives, because as my learned friend here was saying, the technology doesn't exist in many cases, and it is towards that process of getting there, correct?
Well, the technology does exist, Richard. So, but the problem, the technology is not available everywhere. So this is one of the discussions that we had last year in the CAF3, that how can we assure that the technology is transferred from the developed countries to the developing countries that need it to build up their infrastructure. So if we will talk about this region or the African region and the other regions that is still behind the game, what we have to do as a one community, you cannot just produce SAF or LCAF even in one place and leave others behind. So this is another issue.
Yes. Now I think the Japan could contribute to such kind of context because we have technology, but on the other hand, we don't have feedstock. So that is the point. We are keen to have the collaboration with other countries like Australia. We are very interested in future of the feedstock and also the future of the...
So there are so many variables in all of this that is trying to be done in such a short period of time.
Well, we aim for that, but as we said at the beginning, regardless of the availability of the technology or the financial aspect or other human capitals as well, even we train people, the feedstock will remain a challenge for us as well. And it's not an easy process that you said, I want to put this amount of the money, we will build the planet, and we have to produce this quantity. The feedstock is an issue, and it's not available even in this region. So
that's correct. I'm so surprised. Actually, when I joined this very challenging matter, it was 3 years ago. Then I found not so many people talk together. Even this matter is important, but they only talk with very similar people. They are not reaching to the other stakeholders. For example, in civil aviation, also in this case, I think we are rare because we myself directly talk to the energy agency and directly talk to the refinery and directly talk to the other foreign countries. But these kind of regulator, I'm not sure how many other countries regulator do the same thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So I strongly recommend my colleagues to do the same thing as what Japan is doing. So thank you very much for inviting me to make this message.
Right.
Yes.
Now, sir,
Yes.
give us the perspective, because you've looked at this in many ways. This is after all I hear from the Arab Aviation grouping. You hear these arguments going backwards and forwards. Where do you lie? Where do you come out of this? Bearing in mind your members, which are the sort we were talking to, have to actually buy the bloody stuff.
Well, firstly, I should have sat way in the back so that you don't see me. You really put me on the spot.
Exactly.
Okay, let's go back to the basics. The carrot or the stick. And we have two models. One in the US, which is the carrot. One in the EU is the stick. Now, where is the stick hitting? The regulator said to the producer, if you don't deliver, I will hit you with a stick. The problem is the producer knows that it will not be able to deliver 10 million or 8 million tons of SAF by 2030. So what they are doing is passing on the stick to the head of the airline, which has to pass it on to the customer. So which one works? The carrot works because the US is by far getting closer to 2030 than the EU. Because as I said...
But then where do you stand, for example, with my learned friends, low carbon aviation fuel, which is neither one nor the other?
Let's not forget that low carbon aviation fuel is going to be an excellent addition to the airlines thriving to try to achieve the CORSIA. Because let's not forget about CORSIA. CORSIA is here. We are going to start buying offsets starting 2024. LCAF, with around 15% reduction of emissions, is going to help us tremendously in achieving CORSIA. But the other problem is we have a multitude of targets. We have the 5% reduction emissions by 2030, which requires, by the way, around 30 million tons of SAF to be produced. And this is where the problem is. It's about tomorrow and about 2030. It's not about 2050. 2050, I mean, most of the people around the room are not going to be here anyway. We are worried about...
You're really cheerful today, aren't you?
This is what we are worried about, 2030. Can we achieve it at the best possible price?
No.
No.
Thank you.
This is the problem.
Thank you.
Richard, can I do a stick fact check?
Go on.
If you suppliers don't make enough, you're going to get hit by the EU stick. What happens to that cost? Are you passing it on to the dear airlines here?
Perhaps coming back, and it's a great discussion how we get to 2030 and beyond. If looking at what's happening at the moment, with all the development that has happened on the both mandate and incentive side, there is actually now clearly supply being built up. I take the example of Neste. We have invested in 1.5 million tons capacity. We have a project ongoing to grow that to 2.2 million tons in 2026. And at the same time, we are investing in research for the future technologies, and that's then for the 30s and beyond. So I think I am optimistic that
You've dodged my question, though.
Sorry.
If you don't make the EU's mandates in terms of how much SAF you're supposed to produce, do you pass that cost on?
This is, again, when building mandates, the decision who is actually the mandated party, that's still something to be exactly defined. But I think it's a cross-industry effort in any case. We need everybody. We need the regulators, we need the airlines, we need, of course, also the fuels industry. It's a joint challenge.
Louise, do you pass on the cost?
Well, I mean, there is no option where we do not do the mandate. We have to do the mandate, and we will do it. So, I mean, the jet fuel that we are commercializing, it will come with SAF.
I mean, I think...
And the cost goes with it, of course, and we are doing all possible to reduce the cost as possible.
There is a key point here, which I think my friend Abdul raised, which is transparency in the economic model is critical. So be it not meeting a SAF mandate and where those costs are, be it the cost of feedstock and having a model where producers are making SAF transparently, both in feedstock but economics, so that we understand cost of production plus the margin. Because I think what is the critical body of work for the next 12 months is ensuring that we build out and fully understand the economic model. And because affordability is critical, and we need governments, and we need customer products, and airlines have to work to try to mitigate the costs. But suppliers have to be open and honest with us on their costs, and working incredibly hard to try to bring down costs so that we all can use this strategically to meet 2030.
I think we should, at this point, pull everybody together. Please, let's come and join.
I'm leaving you. You're going to be okay. You've got the regulators.
If I may, as everybody is moving, in terms of costs, I completely agree. And to rebound on what I said before, it's very important that we reach a level playing field, because as of today, if you bring 1G SAF with subsidies from the US into Europe, it's clearly not the same cost as when you produce with local feedstock, second generation, used cooking oil or animal fat in an existing European refinery. Okay, so the costs are not the same. So the European regulation is asking for something which is not asked for other requests for the ICAO, for instance, you know?
So even before, we have this issue, as we've been talking about it. First of all, can you make the damn stuff? Can you make it in enough quantities, and can you get it to the right airport in the right place at the right price? But then you have the second problem, Andrew, which is how it all gets accounted for between the various different schemes. Abdul, my good friend, was talking about Corsia, but can that same, the flight that goes from Frankfurt to New York, can that same gallon of SAF be not double counted, but can it be counted for one scheme versus another scheme versus a third scheme versus the ETS scheme? That's also a core issue of how you actually certify and use it, and that's a regulatory problem.
Yeah, well, the certification is not an individual regulator problem. Now we are working with ICAO very closely, and we have a dedicated team, the certification team, to work on the LCAF and SAF certification. And we encourage to have one standard for certifying either LCAF or SAF or other cleaner energy. So it's not anymore a unilateral certification or one region to certify and the other region has a different standard. It won't be accepted in CORSIA. So no matter what certification you have in any region, if it's not meeting the sustainability criteria and the certification requirements of the ICAO, it won't be rewarding the airlines, let's say, within the CORSIA scheme and when it comes to the offsetting. So,
but why isn't everybody talking to each other?
Yeah, so this is the problem. We are still not talking to each other. I've been traveling this year many times in different forums. First time I was in Athena for the airports meeting for the SAF and LCAF. Last week I was with IATA Energy Forum where I met all the oil suppliers and SAF suppliers as well. So as of today, all the events for different stakeholders happening in different regions without bringing all the stakeholders together. And that's why, and this is going to be a new announcement that we have as a UAE government. We are going to host next year the GES, which is the Global Investment Symposium, Implementation Symposium. And for the first time ever, we will be going to introduce the SAM, which is a Sustainable Aviation Fuel Marketplace, where we are under the umbrella of ICAO going to invite all the stakeholders for the first time ever to be in the same room for 1 or 2 days to talk to each other, because the chain is missing today. The suppliers talking alone, and the airlines are suffering on the other side.
And the important thing is not only the multilateral, bilateral is crucial.
Yeah.
You know, we are in the aviation sector, which has home country as well as destination country. You need to get not only your own home, but also your destination. So from that viewpoint, we, Japan, are eager to have the direct communication in the government base with, for example, Singapore or United States. And we propose the idea of green lane that is a kind of the comprehensive approach to stimulate production of SAF, not only SAF, but also the improvement of their sustainability. So this kind of concept is based on the idea that if you want to have the enough quantity of SAF, you need to get the assistance of not only your own home country, but also for the destination country. So that kind of actual dialogue between each government sector in bilateral base is also important in addition to the multilateral things. Yes.
Andrew, from the airline perspective, how realistic is it that there would be one easy certification process and way of accounting for SAF? And who is it that we need to bring on stage to make that happen?
Where's Willie? No, I do think we can solve this. We have done it before. Corsia is a great example where the world of aviation came together. Yeah, there are different standards at the moment and there is enormous complexity, but we're not overly worried that we will not, as a community, be able to come up with a global standard and a trading model that works. It will be fits and starts to begin with. A lot of airlines are experimenting on how we capture and deal with Scope 3 emissions for our customers, but that will evolve, I'm sure, into global platforms, and all the big players will see an economic opportunity. I mean, we need to be careful there on costs, but I'm confident we'll have a technology solution that's global.
Willie, you're in the middle of all of this. Whether it's Corsia or EU mandates or something ETS scheme, your members have to actually deal with it on a daily basis with the possibility of the sanctions hitting the prices or the incentives. What are you going to do? You feel like you're being bashed on both sides?
No, I think we're getting more and more confident, and I agree fully with what Andrew is saying. You know, obviously we look at this, and I think this is a fantastic debate, and I really thank all of the panelists for coming along. I would point out one thing. Total's net earnings last year was $23.2 billion US. The whole airline industry's net earnings in 2023 was 27 billion. So, you know, when we talk about a level playing field, we don't have a level playing field. The fuel companies who produce the problem, if you like, because the carbon, the CO2 is coming from the fuel. It's not actually coming from, you know, the airplane per se. You know, we need to see fuel companies like Total investing significant sums of money in the development of sustainable aviation fuel. That's the reality of where we are. We all want to get to net zero in 2050. There will be many different ways of getting there, but the good news is that this year, only about 6% of renewable fuels will go to aviation. So there are a lot of renewable fuels out there. You know, what we want to see is that more of that production goes to aviation. And why doesn't it go to aviation? Because there are incentives for the production of other renewable fuels that aren't available for aviation. So when I look at what's going on, my view is that the incentive, the current approach, is the best way of assisting our industry to get to net zero. And the other point I would make, and I said in my speech yesterday, the 5% target in 2030 is a government target. It's ICAO, it's the collection of governments. It's not what the industry is targeting, because we're sitting there and we're saying, actually, 5% in 2030 is going to be incredibly ambitious. So let me finish, given that they've put the target in place, I think governments have a responsibility to assist in achieving the target that they set.
How did you end up in a situation? How did you end up in a situation where once again aviation is stuck in the middle between these different global government bodies, and you're going to end up paying the bill. It's a real achievement.
Well, thank you. We work hard to do that. And thank you for the media's assistance. We always blame you, as you know. But no, look, it's the reality of where we are. But this dialogue, exactly as the comment has been made, and I really do appreciate the panelists, it is important that we're all in the same room talking to one another. And I think part of the problem has been this discussion has gone on without everybody participating in the discussion.
Thank you. Anna.
I think we're going to give Louise the opportunity to answer on behalf of big energy here.
Yes, so thank you for raising our excellent result in 2024. And I want to have an answer to that. We're very happy of the result, of course. I want to repeat that TotalEnergies is committed to net zero 2050. And I think that it's the most committed and the most delivering today's results and proofs of the commitment in the industry. So out of this 23 billion, we are investing around 18 billion, and 5 of this is for new energy, renewable energy. So we are investing $5 billion per year for renewable energy. A part of it is for electricity. That's one part of the strategy. The other part is for renewable molecules, and the big part of it is for SAF. So I don't agree that we don't do our part for SAF. We are doing our part. We have a $4 million investment in France to do co-processing for SAF. We have another hundreds of million investment in our Grand Prix refinery to convert it to HEFA production. So we are really delivering. We are also putting in place a huge team of R&D, and a big part of it is for H2. So we are searching for H2. We had a demo flight with Masdar in the last COP28 for a methanol to jet flight. So we are really doing our part.
Do you think you're a bit late to the party, though? Are you a bit late to the party compared to Neste, for instance?
Oh, no. No, because, I mean, the rest of our investment is to sustain the demand of energy of the world on the fossil fuel, because this is not going to disappear tomorrow, because the planes and the engines are not ready for anything else today as fossil fuel and SAF, jet and SAF, which we are producing, by the way. So, I mean, we are going along with the industry. The production is one part of the problem. The regulator is another part of the problem. And the other part is the consumer. So, you know?
How can the consumer be part of the problem?
Yeah, of course.
How?
We need also, I mean, you know, we are also delivering fuel to the road transportation, okay? We are investing massively through EV charging, electric charging. Okay, so this needs the whole ecosystem of the road industry to switch to EV cars. Okay, this you cannot do it from one day to the other. But you need to change the demand in order to stimulate the production, and we are ready to do it. But if the demand is not here, and by the way, the SAF market today is long. So the aviation industry is not up to the supply of SAF as of today.
You know who you didn't blame? The airlines. I think they're the only person
I'm
you
not
didn't blame.
blaming. I'm not blaming. I'm just raising the point that if you listen, and we were talking with Argus last week, the SAF production today that is brought to Europe is above the demand from the airline. The price is dropping.
Because
that's a fact today. I don't say that tomorrow it will be the same, and I don't say that the overcost of SAF is not substantial. That's a reality.
If I may, one other comment on the earlier debate around global and the complexity.
Yeah.
I think while it's fully correct that we are seeing different approaches in Europe and in Asia Pacific and in US, I think what is important to note, now there is movement. And I think that's very important that we, while over time, whether it's then aligning globally or whether it's bringing in new technologies, that is very important long term. But it's also very important that we are actually now moving ahead in the different regions, setting high enough ambitions and really, as an industry, creating this market. And that needs to continue.
The thing I find perhaps the most fascinating is that we are trying to reach a target or an end game with technologies that may not have been created yet, in a forum that we're not using yet. I mean, it is literally, Andrew, changing the engine while the plane's flying. And I'm listening to, you know, the 100 million investment here or this million investment there. You're trying to find the answer to the question that we don't really know yet.
That's right. What's the other saying of heart surgery whilst running a marathon? Incredibly complicated and difficult, but we're still optimistic. I would come back to the earlier comment, though, because I think this is the heart of the conundrum, which is, I think by 2030, we will be short on supply. The challenge at the moment is if there's any surplus SAF available right now, we would buy it as the airlines immediately, but you can't digest 4 times the cost of jet. So I say to the producers that we appreciate very significant investments. You are critical to the solution, but there has to be a strategic role here where people are not focused just on maximizing profits on the first batch of SAF. This is a long-term play. Many of the producers have big balance sheets to be able to help achieve that. So we have to think about the billions of litres of SAF to be produced, not millions. And that's what I think the only hope is on the economics coupled with government, that we get scale to bring down price.
I want to go back to the 5% argument when you said that this is a global number or mandate that we have agreed on in 2023 in November and here in Dubai. It's not the government only's roles. When we debated that number or when we negotiated in the room, we had all the aviation stakeholders with us. The manufacturer pushed for it, IATA pushed for it, everyone. So it's the role and the responsibility for everyone to work together to achieve the 5%. So if you allow me to complete this, we in ICAO now are reviewing the 15 years of work that happened, the last 15 years, the backward effort that's been done by technology, operation, fuel suppliers, government, to see where we are from the first aspirational goals. If you guys remember the aspirational goals ever, the first goals that we adopted in 2010, in order to see where we are sitting today and how we can achieve the 5% in the next, we don't have much years, 6-7 years. So this is the discussion that we are having at the ICAO's level as a government representative with all the stakeholders with us. So it's not only one stakeholder.
I just have to correct that. IATA did not push for a 5% by 2030. Absolutely not.
They pushed for higher.
We did not. Sorry.
They pushed for higher.
Excuse me.
No,
we did not.
I was negotiating with them. They wanted higher even. We reduced the number as a government to 5%. I have IATA here.
Thank you for joining us, but we did not push for 5% in 2030. The reason we didn't push for 5% is that we don't believe that globally you can achieve 5% reduction in 2030.
I agree with you.
And why would we push for something that we think is impossible to achieve? We did not do it.
Right.
Now, the target, the aspiration was set by government. It was not set by IATA.
So you have got the 5%, but it's not, you don't agree with it?
No, because we don't believe, based on everything we see,
well, we wish
that it's going to be possible. Richard, unless governments start moving and moving fast to support the production of sustainable aviation.
Thank you, DG.
Yes.
Sir?
Director General, I'd like to supplement some comment from the viewpoint of her as well as viewpoint of Japanese government. Yes, what she is saying, how consensus making process of CAF is transparent and involving so many stakeholders. But I fully agree with you. That is only the global target. So whether it could be practical and should be well implemented is fully depend on each individual government's action.
Right.
So from that viewpoint, what you are saying is correct. And as for incentive or mandatory, I agree with you. As for incentive, we always need to have this severe competition. How to get the pie to our industry? We need to compete other industry and other ministry. I always compete.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Very good.
Yes.
Good of you to compete, sir, and very good of you to be here, sir. Thank you. I think that shows exactly why we're all here today.
We told you it would be entertaining.
Now, who's got the aspirin? I promise you to... You're not charging me for it, it's an extra cost. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I think we are... The significance of this morning has been to basically rip off the Band-Aid. And as I promised you at the beginning, no more of this nonsense of bouncing over the surface. We've got to get to this target. Mandates or this, mandate. Oh, no, no. As we've shown today, this is about the nitty-gritty. This is getting the marigold gloves out and doing the dirty work that is required to be done. And I'm very grateful to our panel who have joined us. Thank you, ma'am.
Very brave.
Sorry?
It's very brave to share a stage, well, mostly with you, I'd say, but...
I think this will go down as one of our better and best debates at IATA. Where do we go now?
I do believe we will let you all go, and we will move on to our next discussion, but I think Anita might be introducing a video before we do, but thank you to you all.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
one and all. Thank you.
Well done.